Some nations were torn apart by invaders, others did it to themselves. From civil wars and politics to geography and ideology, these are the countries that split in two, creating two nations where there was once only one. Few divisions on Earth are as symbolic as the Korean Peninsula. Before 1945, there was just one Korea, a united kingdom with a shared language, culture, and identity that stretched back thousands of years. But after the defeat of Japan in World War II, the Allies drew a temporary line along the 38th parallel, splitting Soviet-controlled North from the US-controlled South. An action meant to be administrative and not permanent. But as the Cold War tensions grew, the line hardened into a border. In 1950, the Korean War began, killing millions and ending in a stalemate. Ever since then, the demilitarized zone has separated two countries that technically are still at war. On one side is South Korea, with their high-tech, democratic, and global economy. On the other, North Korea, who is isolated, totalitarian, and armed to the teeth. The border is just 250 kilometers long, but it's one of the most heavily guarded places on Earth. Families remain divided, roads end abruptly in fences, and propaganda speakers still broadcast across the line. One single pencil line drawn in 1945 created two worlds that have never truly rejoined. But Korea isn't the only nation that split over politics. One country in Europe did it peacefully. Both sides still thrive today. In 1993, Czechoslovakia ceased to exist, not through war, but through agreement. Formed after World War I, it united Czechs and Slovaks under one flag, but over time, economic and cultural differences grew. Czechs in the West had an industrialized economy, and Slovaks in the East had a more rural one. When communism collapsed in 1989, both sides began to redefine their future and realized their visions didn't align. So instead of fighting, they negotiated a split. On January 1st of 1993, the country divided peacefully into the Czech Republic and Slovakia, an event known as the Velvet Divorce. Today, both nations are members of the EU and share open borders while maintaining close relations. It's proof that not all national splits lead to chaos. Some are simply evolution done correctly. If the Czechs and Slovaks separated with handshakes, one country in Europe tore itself apart with gunfire in the middle of the 1990s. In the heart of the Balkans once stood Yugoslavia, a federation of 6 republics, being Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, Macedonia, and Serbia. It was a patchwork of ethnicities and religions held together by one leader. When Tito died in 1980, nationalist movements erupted. By 1991, Slovenia and Croatia declared independence, and the country collapsed into a series of brutal wars. The Bosnian War became the bloodiest, with ethnic cleansings, sieges, and the destruction of entire cities. When the dust settled, Yugoslavia was gone, replaced by 7 nations, each scarred by conflict. The capital of Belgrade remained in Serbia, but the dream of unity vanished. Today, the Balkans are peaceful but still divided by identity. What was once one of Europe's largest and most influential countries fractured into pieces, not because of geography, but because people couldn't agree on who they were. Sometimes division doesn't come from ethnicity or politics, it comes from a single river slicing a country in two. In 2011, the world watched a new nation appear on the map, South Sudan. It was the first country born in the 21st century, created by dividing one of Africa's largest states. For decades, civil war would rage between Sudan's North and South. The North was predominantly Arab and Muslim, the South African and Christian. The two regions had different cultures, languages, and resources, and when oil was discovered, the divide only deepened. After 2 brutal wars that killed more than 2 million people, a peace deal allowed the South to vote for independence. The result was overwhelming. 98% voted to secede. South Sudan would be born, but peace did not last. Internal conflict, corruption, and economic collapse would follow. The new border cut oil pipelines in half, leaving both nations struggling. Sudan split itself into two to stop war, but in doing so, created new wars within. If Sudan's split was driven by history and blood, one country's division was driven by ideology, capitalism versus communism, and freedom versus control. After the Second World War, Germany would be divided between the victorious Allies. The Western zones became the Federal Republic of Germany, aligned with the West, and the Soviet zone became the German Democratic Republic under communist rule. Nearly 30 years go by, and a concrete wall runs through Berlin, physically and politically dividing families and communities. East Germans lived under strict surveillance, while West Germans thrived under democracy. More than 5,000 people attempted to escape East Germany, and many were captured or killed at the wall. In 1989, the wall would fall, and the world watched as East and West Germans crossed the checkpoints, hugging after decades apart. By 1990, Germany would be reunited, one of the very few divided nations that truly became whole again. The scars remain in memory and archive. architecture, but Germany's reunification stands as a rare success story of a nation healing itself. While Germany rejoined, one Asian country split for good, the only nation that voluntarily created two governments within one identity. In 1949, after years of civil war, the Chinese Communist Party took control of mainland China. The defeated nationalist government fled to the island of Taiwan, establishing its own capital in Taipei. Both sides would claim to be the legitimate government of all China. For decades, the world recognized Taiwan as China, that is until the 1970s when diplomatic recognition shifted to Beijing. Today, Taiwan operates as a fully democratic, prosperous nation with its very own army, government, and passport. Mainland China still claims it as a province and vows to reunify it by force if necessary. Technically, the two are not separate countries under international law, but in practice, they function as completely different worlds. It's one of the most delicate geopolitical balances on Earth, a self-made division that could redefine the next global conflict. While China and Taiwan live under separate flags, one nation split runs along the equator, half in one hemisphere, half in another. Stretching across 17,000 islands, Indonesia is more like a collection of countries than one nation. Its vast geography once included the eastern half of New Guinea, but in 2002 it lost East Timor after decades of struggle. East Timor was colonized by Portugal, while the rest of Indonesia would be ruled by the Dutch. When Indonesia declared independence, it annexed East Timor in 1975, and the result was 24 years of conflict and occupation that killed tens of thousands. After a UN-backed referendum in 1999, East Timor voted overwhelmingly for independence. By 2002, the separation would be complete. A geographic and cultural split born of colonial mismatch. Indonesia did not collapse, but it did lose part of itself forever, proving that even the largest of nations can fracture when distance and history outweigh unity. If Indonesia's division was shaped by islands, another nation was shaped by a river, one that literally cut a people in two. When Pakistan was created in 1949, it existed in two pieces, the West and the East, separated by 1,600 kilometers of Indian territory. The idea was to unite Muslims under one nation, but geography and culture made it impossible. The East was more populous, but political power stayed in the West. In 1971, after years of neglect and repression, the East would declare independence. Pakistan sent troops, India intervened. After a short but intense war, Bangladesh would be born. It remains one of the most successful new nations of the 20th century, but the separation left deep wounds and millions displaced, with over 500,000 killed. Pakistan's split was one of the most dramatic in history, a reminder that religion alone cannot hold a country together if geography refuses to cooperate. And while Pakistan's two halves fell apart, one country's split was still unfolding, divided not by war or distance, but by politics inside of its own borders. Technically, the United Kingdom is 4 countries in one: England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. But that unity is far from guaranteed. In 2016, Britain voted to leave the European Union, but Scotland and Northern Ireland voted to stay. Now both regions question their own future in the Union. Scotland's independence referendum in 2014 narrowly failed, but another is being planned. Northern Ireland, meanwhile, faces unique challenges, sharing a land border with the EU via Ireland. The UK has not yet split, but it's fracturing from within, and it may not take war or revolution, only democracy, for one of the world's oldest unions to divide itself. Countries split for many reasons: ideology, identity, geography, or survival. Some reunite stronger, while others vanish forever. But in every case, the division begins not with borders, but with people who stop believing that they belong to the same place. And history goes to show it's far easier to draw a line on a map than to erase one. The world is full of mysteries, and we're here to crack them. Thanks for watching World Cracked. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.